Hi, my name is Autumn Price, and I'm here to talk with you a little bit about Roger Williams and his status as a Puritan, to arguably his hand in the founding of the Baptist Church in America. And with this project, I used a lot of different sources. I used magazine articles, websites, books. I really came to heavily rely upon Mark Noll's book, which is the course text, detailing the history of Christianity in America and Canada. I also came to use some of Williams's own personal writings that really just sort of provided a nice background on him and his beliefs, why he believed some of the things that he did in his transition throughout. I also used some websites that detailed the history of the Baptist Church in America and just sort of discussed the history behind that and how that came to impact American culture. Roger Williams' banishment from the Puritan colony of Massachusetts and subsequent founding of the Baptist denomination has been a subject of great historical interest for over 350 years. Williams' transition from separatism to Reformed baptism helped shape the Great Awakening into one of the greatest theological movements in history, along with propelling the movement that would eventually see America express religious tolerance for non-Anglican denominations. Roger Williams was born in London in 1603. Early on, he was involved in the Church of England, but became a Puritan at Cambridge upon realizing the depth of the corruption within the Anglican Church. Williams married in 1629, and he and his wife Mary had 6 children. Shortly after he started a family, Williams became a separatist and left London for the New World. Williams was disheartened by the Church of England's hold over the colonies, which he saw as irredeemably corrupt, and he began to fervently advocate for separatism, freedom of religion, and the separation of church and state. The leaders within the Massachusetts colony saw Williams as a threat, and saw to it that time after time his offers of employment would be rescinded, most notably in Salem. Williams continued to preach religious toleration, and was finally offered a position as teacher in Plymouth. Williams preached sermons criticizing King James I for his religious affiliations and beliefs, and was summoned to Massachusetts General Court in Boston to answer for his crimes. And there was a big controversy surrounding King James at the time, arguably because of his Catholic ancestry. Although King James had been raised a Protestant, both of his parents were Catholic. His Scottish ancestry was Catholic, and he had been the King of Scotland for 35 years before he had ascended to the British throne, the English throne. The court found Williams guilty of having erroneous and dangerous opinions and ordered that he be removed from his church position. The court subsequently tried him again for preaching, quote, diverse, new, and dangerous opinions, and had him banished from the colony. Noll's book talks a little bit about Williams's banishment at this time, and just sort of how that all went down and came to affect the religious atmosphere in the colony. Williams left Salem and settled in Providence, Rhode Island, where he formally broke with Puritanism. It was here that Williams founded the first place in modern history that recognized religious liberty and separation of church and state. In 1638, Williams rejected infant baptism. This was huge, and subscribed to the belief that one must only be baptized if he or she is able to give consent. So he really just sort of broke away from the Anglican idea, the Puritan idea of the Catholic idea, of infant baptism, and this was really where the Baptist tradition really started to get in motion in America. This transition of beliefs has been seen by historians as perhaps the beginning of his transition into a more, quote, reformed faith. He was baptized by Ezekiel Holliman later that year. Williams and his friend, John Clark, later founded the First Baptist Church in America, known as the First Baptist Church in Newport, Rhode Island. While Williams never formally affiliated himself with another denomination throughout his life, he is most widely regarded as being the founder of the Baptist denomination in America and most closely adhered to their beliefs. Williams' contributions to the Baptist denomination of the Christian faith helped inspire the recognition of religious liberty and separation of church and state in America. Specifically, Williams possessed an extreme distaste for state-endorsed religion and believed that such a practice was directly antithetical to the teachings of Christ. Williams believed that religious tolerance and liberty led to prosperity overall, and his insistence that churches should avoid the corruptions of the state that soured the Church of England helped influence American religious toleration and freedom for all. Williams was a historian, and he was able to go back and look throughout periods of English history and really understand religious persecution in England, whether it be, and not just in England, but in Europe as well, whether it be the Huguenots in France, or the Catholics in England. He really understood that any time a state endorsed a religion, that religion sort of arguably came subservient to the state. And he saw America as this newfound land that had been blessed by a spirit of liberty that was different than that of Europe, different from anywhere in the world. And I think leaders like Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Adams really studied his writings and his philosophies and also saw this, that there was a great fear that not necessarily that religion would come to dominate the state. There was that fear, but there was also fear that state would come to dominate the religion, as it had in Catholic France, as it had in Anglican England. And so I think Williams was very wary of this personally, and he wanted to work very hard to ensure that this seed of American liberty, this flame of American prosperity and liberty and tolerance was not snuffed out by tyranny. And so even though King James was a beloved monarch, Williams had great reason to sort of distrust him and distrust that sort of head figure above not only the government, but also the religion. And he saw those two things as sort of intermingling and getting tangled up to where eventually one would swallow the other. And he believed that to be subservient to the government beliefs. At least that's how he saw it in France and England. And he saw that as being directly antithetical to the teachings of Christ. He believed that God should be placed first in every individual's life, that every individual should choose to believe in God, choose to follow Christ of their own free will. He didn't believe in a mandatory sort of religious test. He really just thought that, as Jesus did, that each individual should make that decision for themselves. And that's one of the reasons why he rejected infant baptism so strongly, is that he felt that that was a decision that parents were making for the children, or caretakers were making for the children, instead of the individual themselves. And some of the quotes that I have to close that I feel are just really insightful to Williams and his beliefs, and how they impacted American society, come from his own writings, which I found on a website. And the first quote says, "Enforced uniformity confounds civil and religious liberty, and denies the principles of Christianity and civility. No man shall be required to worship or maintain a worship against his will." And I think he sort of was maybe referencing or alluding to England and France here, with sort of the idea that citizens were sort of forced, or had to adhere to the religion of their monarch, the religion of their king, their queen, and there was no tolerance for this. There was no real area to where this could be ignored or overlooked. There was heavy persecution with this. And the second quote says, "But who is to decide who truly fears the Lord? The magistrate has no power to enforce religious demands. The laws of the first table of the Ten Commandments are not regulations for a civil society or a political order. They belong to the realm of religion, not politics." And lastly, I just think that really sums up Williams's belief that the kingdom of God was above the temporal world of politics, of kingship, of any sort of government-run entity. He believed that the kingdom of Christ, and rightly so, he believed that the kingdom of Christ should be placed first above all else. And that's really how Roger Williams, the English Puritan, separatist, then Baptist founder, arguably, shaped the course of American Baptist tradition and heritage and religious freedom, liberty, and toleration in America for all.